Stop seeking love in those still asleep. It's one of life's quietest heartbreaks, the moment you realize that not everyone you care for is meant to meet you where you've awakened. You can't build deep connection with someone who's still living on the surface of themselves. You can't be fully seen by eyes that are still closed. But still, we try. We try to convince, to heal, to awaken others with our love, as if love alone could be a rescue mission. And in the process, we forget that love was never meant to be proof of our worth. It was meant to be an expression of it. Viktor Frankl once wrote that love is the only way to grasp another human being in the innermost core of their personality. But even he understood that not every soul is ready to be grasped. Not every heart is ready to be touched in its depth. When someone is asleep, when their life is ruled by fear, by ego, by distraction, your depth feels like a mirror they can't face. They turn away not because you're unworthy, but because they're not yet willing to see themselves clearly. You become too much, too intense, too honest. And so you shrink yourself to fit their comfort. You dim your light to keep their gaze. You lower your frequency to keep their company. But love born from self-abandonment isn't love. It's survival disguised as devotion. Neville Goddard would say that we always meet people at the level of our own consciousness. What we are conscious of being determines the quality of our relationships. When you are awake, when you've begun to remember who you are, you start craving connection that feels real, not performative. You want to be met, not managed. You want silence that speaks, not noise that distracts. But if you keep seeking love in those still asleep, you'll confuse familiarity with intimacy. You'll keep rewriting yourself to match a frequency that no longer belongs to you. Goddard would remind you, you cannot attract what you've outgrown. Once you elevate your state of consciousness, anything or anyone not aligned with it begins to dissolve. It's not loss, it's natural separation. The universe rearranges according to vibration. Napoleon Hill, in his pragmatic way, would translate this into the law of harmony. He'd tell you that every relationship is an alliance of vibrations. The mind that has awakened to purpose cannot stay entangled with one that still feeds on distraction. You can try to explain your growth, to rationalize your clarity, but those still asleep don't hear words. They hear threats. Your evolution disrupts their comfort. They prefer the predictability of smallness to the uncertainty of awakening. Hill would say that success, even in love, requires definiteness of purpose. You can't reach your higher path while clinging to people who are committed to staying where they are. The cost of your peace will always be their approval, and you must decide which is more valuable. Andrew Huberman might describe this dynamic through the lens of neurobiology. When two people connect, their nervous systems synchronize, a dance of oxytocin, dopamine, and mirror neurons. But when one person lives in chronic stress or emotional denial, their system resists resonance. The connection feels one-sided because it is. You give safety, they give survival. You offer presence, they offer performance. Your body knows the truth before your mind does. You feel drained after seeing them, confused after loving them, smaller after explaining yourself. That's your biology warning you that your nervous system is trying to attune to someone who hasn't yet learned calm. You can't heal through connection with what keeps you fragmented. Frankl would see this differently but beautifully aligned. He'd say that true love is not about possessing another, but about calling forth the best in them. Yet he'd also remind you, you cannot awaken another soul by sacrificing your own meaning. Love is not about losing yourself in another's slumber. It's about staying fully awake while honoring where they are. You can love someone and still walk away. You can forgive them and still choose peace. You can see their potential without making it your project. Frankl believed that meaning is found in responsibility, to life, to love, to one's own conscience. Your first responsibility is to the truth that speaks quietly inside you. The truth that says, I deserve to be met in my fullness. But the hardest part of awakening is the loneliness it brings. You start seeing through illusions of love, of validation, of belonging, and what once felt like connection now feels like noise. You look around and realize how many relationships were built on shared wounds instead of shared growth. The comfort of being understood gives way to the pain of being unseen. You stop being entertained by what once distracted you. You stop chasing people who don't chase truth. You stop explaining your sensitivity, your silence, your need for depth. Because how do you explain color to someone who's never seen light? This is where most people fall back asleep. The loneliness becomes too heavy, the silence too loud. They return to half-love because full solitude scares them. But Neville would whisper that imagination creates reality, and solitude is where imagination refines itself. When you stop seeking love externally, you begin to cultivate it internally. You realize that you were never lonely, only disconnected from your own source. The love you were begging others to give you was the love you were withholding from yourself. The people who couldn't meet you were simply mirrors, showing where you still refused to meet your own soul. Huberman would call this the neuroplasticity of healing, the rewiring that occurs when you stop outsourcing regulation to others and start creating it within. Your breath becomes your anchor. Your focus becomes your medicine. Your calm becomes your boundary. Slowly, your body learns safety without permission. You no longer need chaos to feel alive. That's when something profound happens. You stop attracting the asleep. Your energy no longer calls them in. You stop needing to explain your worth because you embody it. Your silence becomes magnetic. Your peace becomes your presence. Napoleon Hill would say that this is the point where purpose replaces approval. When you stop chasing love, you start creating it. Through your work, your vision, your alignment. Love stops being a need and becomes a natural extension of your vibration. Hill believed that every desire, once purified by clarity, finds its rightful expression. The right people, the right opportunities, the right timing, all appear once you stop negotiating your frequency for acceptance. But love doesn't disappear. It evolves. It stops being a performance of longing and becomes an experience of recognition. When two awake souls meet, there's no need for games, no fear of silence, no addiction to chaos. There's simply resonance. Goddard would say they share the same state of consciousness. They remember themselves through each other. That's what true connection feels like. Effortless alignment. Not because it's free of challenge, but because it's rooted in awareness. Each sees the other clearly and still chooses to stay awake. Frankl would see it as the ultimate act of meaning, to love without illusion, to connect without possession. He'd say that awakened love is not about finding someone to fill the void, but about sharing the fullness of being. It's a partnership between two people who have both met themselves and now meet each other not out of need, but out of overflow. Yet to reach that, you must first pass through the silence of separation. You must stop knocking on closed doors and start opening the one within. Every time you chase love from those still asleep, you're really trying to avoid your own awakening. You're hoping someone else will make you feel what you're afraid to feel on your own. But life will keep repeating this lesson until you understand. No one can love you beyond the level of consciousness they've reached, and no one can meet you more deeply than you've met yourself. When you finally accept this, something shifts. You stop taking rejection personally. You stop romanticizing potential. You stop explaining your growth to those who mock it. You stop seeking softness from those still hardened by their own pain. You start choosing peace over validation, solitude over pretense, truth over attachment. And that's when you realize, awakening doesn't make you loveless. It makes you love differently. The more awake you become, the less you chase love, because you realize it was never outside you. You start to see love not as an exchange, but as a state. You feel it in nature, in silence, in creation, in your own breath. You begin to understand why solitude feels holy. Because in solitude, you reconnect with the source that all love comes from. And from that space, you attract, not by effort, but by essence. You draw in those who see not just your face, but your frequency. And when that happens, when you finally meet another awake soul, it doesn't feel like discovery. It feels like remembrance. There's no explaining, no convincing, no fear. Just recognition. A knowing beyond words. I see you. I've been waiting for you to wake up too. So stop seeking love in those still asleep. Let them rest. Let them dream. Their time will come, but it's not your job to wake them. Your only task is to remain awake yourself, to protect your peace, to deepen your awareness, to stay open without dimming. Because one day, someone equally awake will find you. Not because you chased them, but because you were finally vibrating at the frequency of truth. And that's the only kind of love worth waiting for. Not the love that wakes you up, but the love that meets you awake.